ジョークに対してなんかそれの説明するのは終わってるよねみたいな。
Welcome to the Lazy Fluency podcast, where we have casual conversations switching between English and Japanese so that you can learn from and with us along the way. I'm Joey.
And I'm Miami.
And the topic of the day is Japanese comedy. But before we get into that, make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and do a drop a review at whatever platform you're listening on. We appreciate the support. With that out of the way, Japanese comedy. Want to make your Japanese friends laugh? Today we talk about how. There's this idea that Japanese comedy doesn't exist, at least from the American perspective, especially with regards to sarcasm. We're going to get into that, but I want you to describe what do you see as Japanese comedy, and more specifically, what do you think Japanese people find funny?
なんか日本の漫才、日本のカメディっていうのは漫才って言うんだけど、大体2人とか3人組の漫才グループで、ある人がボケで、ある人がツッコミっていうのが主流の漫才のなんていうのパターンで、ボケっていうのはなんて言えばいいんだろう。ボケ Idiot なんだ。そうで、そのボケの人はなんかちょっと stupid things やったりして、でツッコミがそれについて反応を示すとか、おい何やってんだよとか、そういう突っ込むっていうのが動詞なんだけど、そういうことをして、このなんて言うんだろう、会話が行ったり来たりするのを楽しむっていうのが日本の漫才。
Yeah, or being like a straight man, so a guy who's playing it very seriously. This type of comedy also exists in the US, but it is, and we're talking about stand-up comedy right now, but I'm really just talking about comedy in general. What do Japanese people find funny? But there are examples in my head of when you have tsukomi and boke. I think Key and Peele, like, Comedy Central, which you've seen before, have like a tsukomi boke dynamic. And that might be one of the reasons you like them. Because although we do have some maybe minor overlap in our preferences for something, comedy is definitely not one of them. And I definitely find the majority of things that I find funny, you do not. And it's not just you. I don't think I've ever found a one-to-one or even close to one-to-one overlap with my comedic tastes with a Japanese person. And I'm trying to explore, and I want to learn more about today about what you find funny and explain more about what I find funny to help you guys out there figure out how to convey jokes to Japanese people. I have done so successfully a few times, and I will talk about those. But Aimi, do you want to talk? I see you have something open about manzai right now. Do you want to talk a little bit more about manzai? Or...
私個人的にあんまり漫才を見る人じゃないんだけど、漫才好きな人はそういう漫才のなんて言うんだろう。なんて言えばいいんだろうね。漫才の会社がその提供してる漫才イベントとか、そういうところでショーを見たりとかするんだけど、あとはテレビとかでも毎週この時間に漫才のやりますとか、コンペティションもあるしね。で話は私が好きな漫才は好きな漫才なんだろう。嫌いな漫才のが言いやすいかもしれない。嫌いな漫才っていうのはなんかただリズムネタっていうのを知ってる？
No.
なんかリズムネタっていうのはなんかリズムに合わせてなんか踊ったりなんか歌ったりする、なんかとても面白いとは思えないんだけど、そういうのは好きな人もいる。でよく流行るんだよ。そのリズムネタっていうのは早く流行ってすぐに廃れちゃうっていうのがよくあるパターン。
Can you give an example? Because right now this is sounding like a combination of my two least favorite things, which is, I'm not saying that Japanese comedy is one of my least favorite things, but I might be suggesting that it's one above them. And musicals, I also don't like. So combining both musicals and Japanese comedy. But can you give an example? Do you have any?
なんだっけな、なんかね、最近のマジでわかんない回なんだけど、中学校ぐらいの時に、ラッスンゴレライっていう、やつが流行ったんだよ。ラッスンゴレライ説明してね、とか、なんだっけな。違う。忘れちゃった。ごめんなさい。なんかそういう歌に合わせて、なんか意味わかんないことを言うのが面白いとか、あと、
Hold up. Where's the joke?
わかんない。だからリズムが面白いとか、あとなんか面白くないのが面白いっていうのが、なんか芸風らしくて、あと、なんかハリウッドザコショウっていう人がいいんだけど、そう。で、その人がマジで、なんだっけな、その人の一番のネタが多分、ある人のインプレッションをして、それをちょっとエンファサイズしたいものを披露するっていうのが彼のなんか芸なんだけど、それがマジで面白くなくて、面白くないのが逆に哀れになって面白いっていう。
So impressions are definitely a style that's in the US, although I don't think maybe it's a little played out nowadays. I think maybe sometimes people use impressions of somebody to help make a joke more, right? You'll get into if you're talking from the perspective of an old man, you might start to talk a little more like, I don't know what an old man is, guys. I'm bad at impressions. But you'll do an impression of an old man and then you'll do a joke maybe to like heighten that. But are you saying the impression itself is the joke? Or
そうそう、なんか大げさにある人の真似をするの。例えば普段誰かがこういうことすると、こういうなんていうの癖がある人がいて、それをエンファサイズしてこうやってやるみたいな。
there definitely is that does exist. I definitely am thinking of, especially if the person is controversial. This probably made a difference. A lot of times when people do get like hyper emphasis, it's under the veil of satire. So they're criticizing something about them and they're exaggerating portions of them to make them seem more ridiculous.
なんかさ、笑い in general でさ、なんで笑いが起こるかっていうので、確か2つか3つポイントあって、で、私覚えてるのは、大げさに言うこととかやることと、あと、なんか、予想したのと真逆の方向に行くものに対して人間って笑うんだって。まあそうだよねと思ったけど。
I mean, I was listening to a podcast on like laughing and the types of laughing. Apparently there's distinction between like a social laugh, which is something where you go, or something a giggle, a chuckle, and then a uncontrollable laugh where you start like, I mean, it's uncontrollable, where you laugh like extremely hard. And the first one serves a lot of like social functions. Yeah, exactly. Descend or something like that. And then
なんかここに目の横にシワが寄るほど、笑うやつだよね。real laugh みたいな。愛想笑いじゃなくて、ちゃんとなんか腹から笑うみたいなのが、確かデュセンヌの笑いみたいな感じなんだよね。
What has made you do I guess, yeah, what has made you like laugh really hard? What are some stuff that you reflected on, like listened to, watched, that made you laugh really hard? Or, in between friends, do you remember like what kind of things make you laugh hard? Or do you watch things that make you laugh? Like comedy?
なんか私さ、ごめん。最近笑いのツボが浅くて、何でも笑っちゃうんだけど、特になんかくだらないダジャレとかでも笑っちゃうんだよね。
No, but like, is there anything in your memory? Like for me, the times I think I laugh the hardest, it depends. I'm watching something that is comedy, and there's that version of laughing. So some of my favorite shows when I was growing up were South Park. Was one of them. Then like when I moved into YouTube, I mentioned Key and Peele. I found Key and Peele very hilarious. I'm trying to think. Now I don't. Sometimes I watch like comedy specials. I don't do it that often, so I guess I don't explicitly listen things to laugh as much as I did before. But I think times I've laughed the hardest had probably been around friends. As to what I was laughing about, it's hard to point to a specific thing. A lot of time I know there is like an reversal of expectations, but I think a lot of times in my head it's more of the absurdity of a situation. Like we will either play a new joke and one person's not aware of it, or and we like we're all like playing into it. Kind of we're all being boke. It's instead of having a tsukomi and boke. I've never really. Like that traditional dynamic, I don't know if I'm a huge fan of. Like the thing I don't like about the tsukomi in Japanese is pointing out the joke isn't funny most of the time to me. The joke is, I feel like when everybody's subtly aware on the joke and then they all roll with it, and then it gets, compounds and compounds. But I feel like we had an example recently, which is a very good example of this, where actually a Japanese person, this is one of my examples of making, I don't know if somebody laughed, but they kind of got the joke I was going for, which is there's this very famous place called Yellow Submarine in Tokyo. It's there's like multiple locations. There's one in Akihabara. It's known for having a bunch of like otaku, geeky related stuff, and it was about to rain. And I mean, it wasn't like a huge, amazing joke, not, top 5 best joke of all time. It was a small thing. It was about to rain. And then I think somebody said, oh no, it's about to rain. Like, what are we going to do? Then we brought an umbrella. And I said, it's fine. We'll be in a submarine soon. So don't worry about it. And then the other person that we were with just goes, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. Never mind. We're good. And then you go, oh, that's funny because Yellow Submarine, it's in the name, like submarine. And then you start laughing to yourself. And then he turns and he's like, ツッコミをする人はもう or what is something like that?
違う、なんかジョークに対してなんかそれの説明するのは終わってるよねみたいな。なんかそれをすることで面白くなくなるみたいな。
Yeah, and at that point I'm like, man, this guy's a good dude. I feel like we can go on this. We have the same wavelength. But so you said you haven't watched any. You don't watch manzai. Do you watch any form of Japanese comedy, television, stand-up, anything? Like humor shows?
私あれ、中学の時に、なんか、まあ陸上部だったんだけどね、トラック&フィールドだったんだけど、サボり気味、陸上部だったんだけど、で、そこでなんか、ある子が、なんか結構漫才好きな子で、なんか最近こういう芸人って面白いよみたいなっつって、なんか、紹介してくれてたんだよ。で、その中で、なんか私が結構ハマったのが、なんか陣内智則だっけなっていう、芸人がいるんだけど、その人は、なんか映像を使って、芸をするのが、なんか主流な人で、結構面白いんだよ。まあ多分日本語上級者の人は、見てもらえたらどんな感じかわかると思うけど、陣内智則ね YouTube とかで検索してもらえれば、私はなんか面白いなとは思った。あれは。
I think you showed me one of the videos before, and I think I remember thinking it was funny. I have seen some manzai comedy, and something I've noticed is a lot of the humor, and this reminds me of actually when I saw stand-up comedy in Spanish, is it's about the speed. There's like a huge tempo portion and not like rhythm and you're singing along. But when I've seen American stand-up comedy, silence and like having a slow delivery and like building up and like adjusting your pace seems to be like a huge portion of the joke and letting it land. Or when I've seen like, when I was watching comedy in Panama, or I've seen Japanese manzai comedy, it's always very, very fast. They go and then, and I feel like Spanish had a very similar vibe. And I actually saw it kind of a manzai. It wasn't really manzai style. It was like dual, what would you say? Like, oh gosh, like a partner, like two people kind of hitting jokes off of each other and talking about random subjects. So that kind of reminded me of that, which is something you don't see as common in the US. But I wanted to ask you something about sarcasm, which is, for one, how would you describe sarcasm as you understand it?
皮肉。皮肉、なんだろう。漫才における皮肉？なんだろう。
And no, with regards to American comedy, like I said at the beginning of the episode, there's an idea that sarcasm isn't something that Japanese has. I disagree with that. I think that it's different, but I want to get your impression. Have you ever heard this before? People saying like, oh, Japanese doesn't have sarcasm or anything of the sort.
ないね。しかもなんかsarcasmすると多分それをさ、なんて言うんだろう。本心で受け止めちゃう人がいるから、例えばさ、なんだろう、アメリカだとそれこそ人種にいろいろね、多様性があるからさ、例えばまあブラックピーポーの人が、こういう、なんていうの、ステレオタイプがあるけど、それのジョークとかするじゃん、アメリカのコメディだと。なんか、
yeah.
そういうのを、まあそれって皮肉でしょ？皮肉？
So I would describe hiniku or sarcasm as I do think it exists in Japanese. I think one good example, it's basically you're saying something, but you're not 100% serious about what you're saying. There's hidden meaning behind what you're saying. A lot of times you're meaning the exact opposite of what you're saying, which can, in that sense, not be the same thing as Japanese. But I would say an example of sarcasm would be your mom walks up into your room and there's trash all over your floor. And she's like, I'm so happy I have a son who really takes care of his room.
真逆のこと言ってね。
Yeah, sometimes it is like that. Other times it's not a direct contrary to it. It could be like there's ambiguity. There's a whole thing about modern Gen Z humor and like irony and then post-irony and a bunch of other stuff like that, which we won't get into, or maybe we'll, I don't know. But the thing I want to talk about with Japanese comedy is I do believe there's the boke, the typical boke, does have some idea of, I don't know if it's full irony, but at least the idea that you're not 100% serious about what you're saying. I know lots of comedy that showed up in anime as well as other stuff where people will straight face a big a type of delivering a joke. Maybe it's just an anime, but I think I've seen it in manzai and like YouTube other stuff is delivering a line that is ridiculous with being but doing it sincerely. But something I've noticed that in American comedy, there seems to be a big emphasis on doing that to illustrate a larger point. Where in Japanese comedy, I've noticed that the joke is just the absurdity of the situation, if that makes sense. But the sarcasm in the US tends to be pinned under a critique or a insight into a specific group or people or something like that. And I feel like that is what Americans tend to actually refer to as sarcasm, where although I think boke, maybe there's some idea of sarcasm, there doesn't seem to be any underpinned meaning behind it.
いや、日本の漫才でも、ボケツッコミの、なんて言うんだろう、エッセンスが入ってる、なんだろう、まあ、ショーで、サーカズムはあるとは思うよ。例えばさ、あるボケが、なんていうの、ボケてる人に対してツッコミがサーカズムを言うとかさ。そういうのはアプライするの？
No, I'm talking about the nuance of sarcasm. I'm saying, for example, oh gosh, what would I do? I'm trying to give an example here of, okay, I wrote down an example of two videos I know have been popular with U.S. audiences as well, but I think illustrate a lot of what can be funny to Japanese people. And it's one thing you showed me, the Japanese tradition. Another thing, which is okoraseru hoho, if you've heard about that before, like hito okoraseru hoho. It's a Japanese series about basically breaking social norms, but doing so in a almost boke type fashion. So it'll be like how like meshi no tsukaikata, like how to present your meshi or use your meshi, and normally you do it with both hands and you present it forward, but instead of that, somebody will just be like, it was like hora, and he just tosses it or throws it. But in there, the joke is the subversion of societal norms, and it's not saying, in my opinion, I'm not hearing like a critique under that saying, look how ridiculous our traditions are. It's more of just saying, well, this is funny because this is not what you normally do. An American version of that joke might be something like, there's a build-up, maybe an office style joke where maybe, I don't know, somebody walks, and I'm talking about like the TV show, somebody walks in and hands the letter or something like with one hand, and then the other person goes like, what are you doing? And then it goes into back and forth. Why would I hand it like that? Like, what, can I just handle it with my left hand? And he's like, no, that's wrong. And I'm like, with both hands. And the joke would build, and it's constantly talking about, look how ridiculous this situation is. And that would be, I feel like, an American version of making that same joke.
なんかロープレイっていうか、なんて言うんだろう、ビルドして、そこに、だんだん笑いが募っていくみたいな。
Well, I'm talking about the critique. So I'm saying in the first joke with the either maybe the sushi, the Japanese tradition, I feel like sushi. Remember so the Japanese tradition is one, it's a series as well. They talk about different cultural aspects, and a lot of times they're not like, the joke is that if you have a firm understanding of Japanese culture, they're slightly subverting the norms and kind of making it more and more ridiculous about how they're breaking the norms. But I never feel that they're critiquing the norms in themselves, if that makes sense. There's not a look how dumb this is, and we should not be doing this because it's ridiculous. It is more so, look how this person doesn't know what they should be doing. Does that distinction make sense? Like, the joke is on the boke for being stupid. The boke is not intelligent. In the US sphere of how I understand sarcasm, a lot of times the person doing boke is pointing out a truth that everybody understands, but initially it seems dumb, but the more you think, you go, wait a second, that guy has a point. I don't feel that level of critique in Japanese comedy. I'm not sure if you understand what I'm trying to say or the nuance of what I'm trying to say, but
難しい。
okay. I will say, do you have any experience listening to Japanese American stand-up comedy or anything like that?
そう、ニューヨーク行った時に、あれ地下だったか。地下じゃないか。first floor か。で、やられてた、アメリカンの、typical コメディを見たんだけど、やっぱり全然違うよねっていうのは思って、まずアメリカのコメディは、なんか、人種の多様性と、あと、セクシュアリティと政治っていうのがなんか3つのポイントっていうか。で、なんかその3つってさ、もうタブーじゃない？タブーといえばこの3つみたいな。
In America, as you're saying?
違う、なんていうの in general で、maybe in Japan かもしれないけど。なんか知らないさ、なんていうの、strangers と話すトピックでさ、人種差別と、なんだっけ、政治と、あと、セクシュアリティって絶対話さないじゃん。セクシュアリティとかセックスとか。その3つをフルコンプリートしてんのがアメリカンコメディだなっていうのは思った。
I do think that some topics maybe traditionally they were more so taboo, but I almost feel like it's the subject itself isn't taboo. It's like so commonly done that it's about so you kind of expect that coming in, but a lot of times, like, you know, when you're talking about a good comic, it's about what like new critique they can bring to a subject they already have and make people think in a different way. This is something I was talking about earlier, maybe illustrating the point a little more, where if you've seen a lot of recent comedy, even almost like people, you know, I listen to who, like, a lot of times, like, oh, it's just a joke. I'm just like saying a joke, and I'm not like criticizing any jokes. I'm saying that's like perspective comedians. They're there to do jokes. But in the American's perspective, a lot of major comedians, there's always something that they're trying to teach or a point they're trying to make with their act. And I could give other examples. Like Dave Chappelle had a whole thing where he's talking about his life story, and, you know, it's controversial about his perspective with trans people. Even somebody else to Bill Burr, a lot of times the jokes about are self-deprecating, where he's like, hey, you don't want to be as like closed-minded as I have been before in the past. It always comes back into some story message.
じゃあさ、もうコメディアンズがさ、もうある種のなんだろう、ティーチャーみたいな感じ。それを、その、レクチャーをどれだけ面白おかしく言えるのかが、コメディアンの仕事的な感じなのかな。
Well, it's more of revealing, like I said, it all comes back to the, like, revealing some sort of truth that, there's another understanding of comedy as well, which is like the fact, it's like something that people understand, but maybe don't overtly think about, and that uncomfortable feeling of it being brought to the surface can result in laughter. And I've heard some other explanation of that as well. And I'm just saying that to me seems like a key mark about the American comedy. And maybe I might be wrong. I haven't consumed enough of it, although I will say my negative impressions of comedy in Japanese make me not want to consume that much of it. But I really do not feel that this was something we were talking about a second ago, which is something as monotonous as commentary over a movie or film, like you were talking about the TV series, right? Someone was just talking about their impressions on or what would happen in upcoming fifth season or how much they liked the series in general. I've looked before. Maybe it's more updated now. I know there's a whole copyright law reason this might not be the case as well for similar commentary and criticism over anime, because I was curious to see like what people are in this space. But anytime I do look at them, it's always very, very general, and they're not actually, because of Japanese copyright, really able to use any assets. So most of the conversation that happens around a given scene, a given episode, ends up being very superficial. And especially when somebody's being critical, it gets heavily penalized by like the viewership. And so I feel like the idea of making any strong stance on something can sort of backfire on you. And I feel like with when going back into talking about whether Japanese has sarcasm, even the doing boke, like just straight up boke in itself, I think doesn't work unless you have like a level social status between you and the other speaker. And a lot of times just being a foreigner and another Japanese person will make the Japanese person in a position where they're not comfortable, and just that alone will make it so they're not susceptible to boke. And obviously there's a language ability too. But like, have you tried to make an American laugh? You know, or like, do you think about this? Like, can I make an American laugh? I know this is something with language learners. I've talked to many of them. Like, I just want to see like how, like, I want to tell a joke, but every time I tell a joke, I just get a blank stare and they go, どういうことですか?
でもじゃあ私はあれだよ、なんか何だっけ、ジョークをそれこそなんていうの、話してる人が外国人だったから笑ってくれたけど、外国人に英語で話してるから笑ってくれたけど、多分それ日本語で話してたら多分笑ってくれてなかったし、なんならその外国人も日本語わからないから笑ってくれないしっていう両面あるよね。
Well, I'm not talking about specifically the language barrier. I'm talking about in person. What kind of jokes do you think make Japanese people laugh? Like, not in a manzai setting, but you and your friend, you're there, you're trying to make someone laugh. When you've made them laugh, what kind of things?
なんかティーズするとか、なんかティーズ、なんかちょっといじるっていうか、なんていうの?
But that requires a level of closeness, right? Like, you wouldn't do that with your teacher, right? But in America, you can, and I mean, I have done this many times, and some teachers aren't acceptable to it, but you do see this, like, kind of punching up and down, maybe, you know, it depends on the level between, like, different social statuses. Or, like, the teachers will do it to the students, or the students will do it back to the teacher. And actually, a lot of times it becomes even funnier when you do it when it's not expected. I was seeing a video on YouTube. I'm not sure if it was a short or not, where the whole joke was a guy walks into a teacher's offices, just the different professors' offices throughout, or is it high school? I can't remember, and just says hello or whatever, or good morning, and then the teacher's first name instead of their last name, because in America you normally address them their first name and last name. And some teachers obviously took it bad, but other teachers also just completely rolled with it or started laughing. And imagining doing that in Japan, I just cannot imagine.
マジでね、怒られる。
Like, yeah, first name. Oh, I don't know. What are Japanese first names? I never even hear them enough to know.
田中つって。それマジで怒られる。
It'd be like, ごきげんよう田中 or something.
いや、そんなことしたらマジで、もう空気が凍る。
Yeah, and so that's what I'm saying. So you don't have any tips. So I have my perspective. If you don't, I'm wondering, do you have any tips about how to make a Japanese person laugh?
いやだからそれこそいじるとか。
But okay, American comes up to Japanese person and goes, like, he like starts messing with them and you're like, how is that gonna work? You know what I'm saying? I think.
わかんないな。まあ人によって笑いのツボも違うしね。私はダジャレを言われたらちょっと笑うよ。
Okay, that's what I was about to say. So I have my personal opinion of how to make Japanese people laugh, and I would say it goes into we've actually hit some of these as well. So I put Japanese people laughing in comedy in 3 categories: slapstick, subversion of norms, like Japanese cultural norms, and then puns. I recommend you attempt any of these 3, but so slapstick would be like something that's wacky on its face. So a weird sound, a weird gesture, noise, or facial expression. People who are familiar with anime might notice a lot of times anime, and I know something, it just is hilarious. The like wacky faces or whatever when you're doing. Attempt number 1. That's something I recommend. 2, subversion of norms, as Aimi pointed to as well. So we're not even gyaku, but sometimes a slight expectation. So let's do the meshi example again, because I think you could make, and I have made people laugh like this as well. So this is one example where I made a bunch of people laugh. You know, one of my proudest moments. I made a full table of high school people laugh, where I think I mentioned before that for about a month before my term started, when I was studying abroad in Japan, I would go to a cafeteria and speak with random Japanese people, like 2 or more. And one time I sat beside a group of 6 Japanese high school or college students, and I saw on the end of a table that had like 8 seats, but 6 of them were taken up. And I sat in the bottom right corner, and I hear them whispering, and they're like, oh, basically, who's that guy? Who's that guy in the corner? And whatever. Do you know that guy? Like, why is he sitting there? He's like, he's right beside me. And then I go, when a person all the way on the other side of the table goes like, well, who is that guy? And points to me. And I turn to him and go, hey, Tanaka, like long time no see. He's like, I remember you since childhood. And everybody goes, whoa. And they turn to him. They go, what? You know him? And then the guy goes, I don't know who that is. And I'm like, Hidoyo. Like, how could you forget me? Like that hurts. And then everybody started laughing because of the fact that I took a situation where they thought they were with a stranger and completely flipped it on its head.
なんかそれされたらちょっとマジでびっくりするし、 なんだろう、知らない人にされたら、ちょっとこの人やばい人じゃないな。
Well, after that, it worked really well. And after that, every time I saw those guys, I had a cool conversation with them. After that, every time I walked around campus, they'd be, oh, Joy. And then they'd throw up their hands when they saw me. So it worked, and it was very successful. And then the last one I would say under the IME category they said is puns. Like I said, apparently the submarine joke was funny enough for IME to have to explain it. So if you're trying to make a Japanese person laugh, those are my recommendations. I don't think you're going to work with something I wrote. Especially not this one. I can't remember what it's called. It's called anti-jokes. I don't think anti-jokes work at all for Japanese people. Have I explained an anti-joke? What it is. Oh gosh. The anti-jokes are, I want to give you an explanation, but I'm trying to remember the classic jokes. It'd be something like, what did the, I'm trying to think. They're pretty brutal, especially if you don't know what to expect. But I know one of them is like, what did the quadriplegic girl get for Christmas? You know what quadriplegic? It's a person with no arms and legs. So it's like, what did the quadriplegic girl get for Christmas? And you were to say what?
Socks and globes.
No, cancer.
Cancer?
So that would be an anti-joke. An anti-joke is you have an expectation for something and it's completely the opposite way, and it's so confusing. Because you would expect something good to happen to somebody and instead something even worse. So I'm saying somebody who has no arms and legs, they're getting gunned on top of that. And that's a joke I don't think would fly with Japanese people. But there was a big period in my middle school, I think, and high school, where anti-jokes were huge, where you just throw a setup or expecting something. Why did the chicken cross the road? And then to be like, because she was trying to save her children because there was somebody kidnapping them on the other side. It was just like a completely random thing. Or there was like another version of anti-jokes where the joke is just how long it takes, the setup of the joke takes, where you'll just tell a joke, start telling a joke like, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And you'll just keep going and see how long the other person can come. And there's no punchline. And then like you just keep holding. And I've helped people like back in the when it was popular. One of my friends, I remember, was telling a story for like 20 minutes, and we didn't realize that he was telling an anti-joke. And he was doing a build-up. He was talking about, oh, there's a priest and there's a doctor and a lawyer, and they walk into a bar and they go this, and this one says that, and that one says this, and we're just listening and we're waiting for a punchline, and it never comes. And so that, and then that, once you all realize what's happening, then that's the joke, because you're like, there is no joke. But yeah, if you're trying to make a Japanese person laugh, or you have, I don't know, some of your favorite jokes. I know asking for jokes isn't the best way to deliver them normally, but let us know. 戻りました。
We're back.
今回お風呂カフェについて話します。お風呂カフェは何ですか？
It's how do you say, like a onsen resort place where you can spend a whole day just paying in, I don't know, it depends on the place, but like we paid like 900 yen for the entire stay.
そう、先週秋葉原の何でしたっけ、集会所について話したんだけど、まあそれとカラオケについても話したけど、一番コスパの高いやつ、ついに見つけられました。それがお風呂カフェ。900円で、一人一人900円で、一日中ぐらい、まあ一日中というのは朝の10時から夜の11時まで、お風呂カフェはどうやって説明できるかな？
I don't know, like the place we went was not like Ofuro Cafe, I think, but like this place, you can go to onsen, and after that you can have like body massage if you pay extra, and also there were restaurants and places to relax. And I remember there was a hideout place too.
そう、
Yeah.
日本語で何でしたっけ？
秘密基地みたいな。
そう、秘密基地。
Secret,
秘密基地。鬼滅の刃。Like a secret bases is kind of, or what's it called? Yeah, I think it's secret base. I'm not entirely sure. 子供で公園とか、まあ、川のそばに作るやつ。
Yeah. And also they got ganbanyoku, which is like basically laying on a hot stone like plate.
Yeah,
I don't know.
床は石で、その床は温められて、 その部屋全体はめっちゃなんかサウナみたいに暑いけど、その湿気がない。水がそんなにない。なんか空気に。ただ床がめっちゃ暖かくて、タオルを何でしたっけ、敷いてから寝るの、ここで。
Yeah. And also I experienced the body massage for the first time in
指圧。
my entire life, and that was so good. And I was surprised how do you say, how strong the massager?
Masseuse? I don't know if female is masseuse female masseuse. I'm not sure.
Yeah. She was, because just using her elbows and hands, it created this pressure on my body, so that really hurt my body. But after that I felt so すっきり refreshed. Yeah.
そう、日本のマッサージだけじゃなくて、指圧と何でしたっけ、足に関するマッサージは何でしたっけ、日本語の言葉あると思うんだけど、その日本の概念、そのリラックスは痛みに関わってる。そのなんか痛まないとリラックスできないという考え方があるらしい。
No pain, no gain.
そうそう、本当に no pain, no gain。欧米のマッサージなどのことに関しては、その痛みはそんなに大事なことじゃない。それよりも、その時点で気持ちいいならいいみたいな。私がアメリカでマッサージされたときは、ほぼ、良かった、気持ちよかった。けど、この場合だと、指圧マッサージの場合だと、めっちゃ痛かった。本当になんか頭の中で、マッサージについて考えるな。この、なんていうか、視点に集中することで、その痛みが感じなくなるみたいなことを思ってた。で、これは気持ちいいかどうか、最初は分からなかったけど、だんだんなんかマッサージが続いていて、これは気持ちよくなってると思って、で、もちろん終わってから、立ち上がった時に、気持ちよかったということに気づいた。でも、不思議な気持ちだった。
Yeah.
で、このお風呂カフェは、私たちが住んでいる場所だけじゃなくて、その東京、多分京都、大きな町であるかな。
Yeah, the funny thing is, a lot of high school students go to お風呂カフェ because it's the only place they can make out legally. Yeah.
Legally?
Without parents 監視下で
Observation?
Yeah, observation. So I don't know, some places there are just young couples making out, but this place, it was pretty relaxing place. Yeah.
言い忘れたのは多分この場所はリラックスするためだけじゃない。勉強するところもあるし、インターネットもちゃんと用意されてるから、パソコンとかなかったら、なくても、なんかお風呂カフェでパソコンが使えるから、勉強したかったら、お風呂に入ってから勉強できるし、あいみはそれをやった。で、私がお風呂に入ってから編集少しだけしました。多分言わなくちゃいけないのは、編集はついに進んでる。いろいろあったんだけど、わかんない。めっちゃ忙しくて、またなんかうまく働けなかったんだけど、ついに動画は進んでる。すいませんでした。とりあえずお風呂のカフェについての話に戻ると、なんか10時間か、12時間で900円勉強できるし、リラックスできるから、その前のカラオケの話に戻ると、勉強だけしたいときは絶対にカラオケに行かない方がいいということ。私たちが2時間ぐらい、3時間ぐらいしかカラオケに行ってないときは、どれだけ払ったの？なんか6000円ぐらい？
No, that was, I don't know, it's for two people, so 3,000 yen or something?
per person ってこと
Yeah.
うん。まあ、それとお風呂カフェの場合だと900円。10時間でも12時間でも、今までの中でコスパの高い経験だった。で、多分また言わなくちゃいけないのは、マラソンについて話したいかな。
Yeah, in 2 weeks, I have a half marathon event. And, like, I haven't gone for long run for a while. So I need to do, like, harder. But it's kind of hard to find time and energy because I have to do rotation at hospitals. So yeah, I have to do my best and be prepared within 2 weeks. And also the concerning fact is it's getting colder and colder in Japan. So yeah, like if it's cold, my body just cannot move properly. So yeah, just I'll have to get used to the coldness in winter.
アメリカ人の方、すみません。あゆみが言ってるのは寒いけど、60度だけです。
No, 50 or 40だよ。
59は寒いに入らないと思うんだけど、まあ少なくとも、まあカリフォルニアの人だったらそれは寒いかもしれないけど、私が住んでたところはもっともっと寒い。とりあえず、あゆみの頑張ってできるよという言葉を送ってください。メールで。まあ、YouTube コメントでもいいので、期待してます。And we're back with the final section. And if you made to the final section, that means you send an email to lazyfluency@gmail.com with a comment, question, language related and or otherwise. And this week we have a comment from Oddity. I could not, Ayumi has a pressing thing she wants to address. So we won't be able to address all the comments, but we will address 3. And her first comment was about Dodgeball. Dodgeball is a stupid, evil game. I absolutely hated it in school and always made sure I'd be hit first so I could go sit on the side and not be bothered. Haha. It's a game without a single redeeming quality. How can a game whose sole purpose is to hurt other people be considered educational anyways? It's not based on teamwork, nor strategy, nor great skill for that matter. Not only that, it contains within its essence the worst school paradigm of all, the popular versus unpopular, forcing kids to be singled out and selected or not selected right in front of everyone for the added shame value. Aimi, you have some stuff to explain about. So I'm on the defensive volleyball in this one. I'm on the pro volleyball side. I don't know. I think Aimi is a neutral stance on this one, but you said you have an understanding of this perspective.
ちょうどオディティが言ってたことを私の友達が言ってて、まあ彼女は確かまあエレメンタリースクールかジュニアハイスクールの友達だったんだけど、なんかドッジボールってさ、要するに人を痛めつけるゲームじゃん。だからなんでそういうゲームがなんかリーガルにあるのかっていうのがその子が言ってたことで、だってまあそうだよね。だってボールをさ人に当てつけてさ、それを喜ぶってかなりなんていうの、最高なゲームだよねって思って、確かにそれはそうだなとは思ったけど、まあでもそんなにボールを当てられても痛くないじゃん、ドッジボールって。なんかボクシングとかだとさ、もう直接パンチするからさ、まあ痛いし、なんなら骨折ったり顔がぐちゃぐちゃになったり鼻血出たりとかするけどさ、ドッジボールはまあそれと比べたらまだマシな方なのかなとは思うけどね、確かに、オリティの、意見は理解できる。
I know that genders aren't a monolith. There isn't stuff that necessarily all men like doing and all women like doing. But I will say, in terms of the traditional understanding of men and those very filled up with testosterone, like I might be myself, I can't help but love dodgeball for all the reasons that you dislike it. And I don't know. So here's the thing. If you're somebody who doesn't enjoy the fierce pretend battle and bloodshed of taking people out, then I do think it is best to not participate in the game. And I do think that you shouldn't be forced to participate in the game. With that said, I cannot say I don't, there isn't a, in a very aggressive masculine part in me that loves the ability to destroy my enemies in a fierce battle, especially do so. Like I make so many homies. Like it's like, you know, in Dodgeball, you see a guy, he gets a good out, he saves you. It's like you're basically saving Private Ryan.
なんかさ、戦闘ゲームみたいじゃない？なんかシューリングゲームね。でさ、なんか敵を倒します。で味方に倒してもらい味方に救ってもらいますみたいな。で、なんかちょっとなんだろう。友情も深まるっちゃ深まるのかな？そのプロセスの間で。
I've been watching Tokyo Revengers, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but there are always these brawls between like local gangs or they're not really yakuza, they're more like local gangs, I guess, between different groups. And I feel like, you know, there's a camaraderie between like them. And I know it's not just men in volleyball, let me be clear here, but I feel like the most aggressive people who may ruin the game for everybody would be men. So maybe at that point, you should just get all the people like me and put them together, and I'd be fine with that. But I feel like it's either dodgeball or you're going to have gangs in your school beating people up. And I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I feel like for me, it's my best way to pretend if I could be in a little like Yakuza gang group, and that part of my head that would be like, man, that actually sounds like you'd have camaraderie, you know, you'd have a sense of killing the opponents and destroying them, that satiate my very aggressive urge at times. Not saying, you know, I only feel this way because it's a pretend, you know, dodgeball and people aren't getting hurt. If you're using like the massive, really big dodgeballs that actually hurt people, then I'm thinking, okay, we have a problem. Also, I think something Audie picked out, which is like the letting people elect who's on their team. I think that's toxic. I think like the random distribution is way more helpful for that. Especially because it's like a casual setting. Do you know what I'm talking about? When they'll have two captains and they'll choose one somebody, then somebody else to choose somebody.
なんだっけ、日本語でなんて言うんだっけな。トリッピ、なんだっけ、忘れちゃったけど、なんかあれでしょ？まず最初に、まあ、2人いて、そのリーダーたちがじゃんけんして、だんだん、メンバーを選んでいくみたいな。で、最後に残った人ってやっぱり惨めだよね。
I think what should happen is, okay, so the upside to that is, generally speaking, the people who tend to be the captains or whatever in those situations tend to be the ones who are more athletic, I've just noticed. And they do tend to have a good gauge about the people on average who are going to be the best contributors on a team, in my opinion. So I think the idea is actually to create fair teams, because it's like if you alternate back and forth, you don't want the other person getting good people. And so you're wanting to choose the people you think are best first. But I think the problem is that everybody who's getting picked can see themselves being picked last. I feel like if you just have the two captains and they just talk beside themselves, be like, okay, let's go this, and then after that you split the teams, then it's going to be good. Either that or you do it randomly. But it's hard to do it like truly randomly, because people who are friends tend to stick together, right? Mm-hmm. So you can't just be like, oh, do it on this half or that half. Okay. Next comment she had was about my Aladdin costume, which I have to read, but also another question she has. She said, Joey, totally rocking the Aladdin costume. Mugen would have been undoubtedly be cooler, though. I know, I'm sorry. Ayami is not too shabby with the glasses and suit either. What was the first time you were on TV? So Ayami actually was originally Wednesday's Addams, I will say, but what was the reason that we didn't? Oh, you didn't want to do the makeup. Right? Yeah, and so that's why we did the scientist, or was it the teacher? I don't know what we were going with. Yeah. As for the first time I was on TV, I was on both on the TV and news, actually, so newspaper. And it was for an event, I'll say. There was an event that I ended up participating in, like an environmental event. And I just had this really, this bird shirt of the Panamanian birds that my brothers bought me before. And the cameraman or whatever for the event, and women, just loved how it looked on me, I think, because I showed up in like 4 or 5 of the, I think it was like 4 of the panels in the newspaper, and then also one on the front page, with me just like sitting there. So they really liked the bird shirt. And so it's not like I said, and I did speak in some of the different sections, and so it wasn't like I was primarily the focus of the text, but I was always in the shot, because I looked clearly foreign, and I had a very nice looking shirt. So that was the other time. I think I've shown you this before, right? Oh, well, there you go. And then the last comment, because I mean, my stuff to say about this is, I didn't know about Akihabara. I looked it up and my eyes lit up. It looks like Giki Valhalla.
Valhalla ってどこ？
バイキンのなんか死ぬ時に行くやつ。戦闘で死ぬ時。バルハラ。わかる？
バルハラは知らなかったけど、まあ、秋葉原ってすごい、なんだろう、魅力的な都市っていうのを再発見したよね。で、なんでかっていうと、なんか新宿とか渋谷って、なんか目的を持たずに行く人が多いじゃん。なんかただ、まあ、その、電光掲示板とかね、テレビとかが、街にあって、ニオンライツとか、まあ、スカイスクレーパーズがいっぱいあって、すごいクールな街だから行くっていう人が多いと思うんだけど、秋葉原って結構みんな目的を持って行ってる人たちが多いと思うのね。で、なんでかっていうと、その秋葉原って結構ニーシュのものに対してそれぞれの専門店とかがあって、で、まあ、例えばだけど、なんだろう、あるアニメの、あの、グッズが買いたいとかね、っていう人が、その、なんて言うんだろう、そのアニメがあんまり有名じゃないと。で、他で見つけられない、他の都市で見つけられないっていう時に、秋葉原で結構、そういう一つ一つの、アニメグッズとか結構あったりして、あと、もともと秋葉原って電気街で有名で、昔ね。だから、それこそ、なんて言うんだろうね。エレクトリックスに興味がある人とか、あと、なんか楽器とかもね、結構ね、秋葉原、ニーシュな感じがしたよね。から、そういうサブカルチャーとかが好きな人にとっては、本当に秋葉原はいいところだなっていうのは思った。
Yeah, Akihabara is my favorite. I don't know if I can limit it to district or place. It's one of my favorite places in Japan. I love Akihabara. It's known for like the maid cafes, but for me, yeah, it's all about the electron. I'm literally okay. I'm a CS Japanese major. It's literally a electronic tech place, also crossed with a Japanese pop culture. Like what else? What else could you give me other than a book off? I don't know if there was a book off in Akihabara. I can't remember. Maybe there's a book off in Akihabara. Uh, but yeah, no, the vibe is really cool. Unlike many places that open up into kind of directly into traffic, which is just a whole thing that's really annoying
歩
about.
行者天国っていう
Whoa,
の
whoa,
が。
whoa. Well, I mean, yeah, you can talk about it if you want. I might talk about the main channel video as well. But, well, anyways, what I was saying was like many places in Japan, when you get off the eki, you're turned up into like a four-way street. But I'm not talking about that right now. I'm talking about when you get out of Akihabara, though, instead of going to a road, you actually end up into a pedestrian area where cars can't come in. You know, like the area with the cafe and what was the marathon? I can't remember, but it's all like pedestrian paving and the cars can't come into the area. And so already off the bat, you feel like there's more pedestrian focus, and it's annoying because Akihabara is sidelined by these two giant highways. They're not, I don't know if they're highways, but very long roads. But they have been doing things to deal with that and open up more pedestrians, and one of which with Aimi was saying, but I kind of want to talk about that in a main channel video. So I don't know. Maybe we'll talk about that some other time. But you don't personally you're not into as much pop culture. So do you personally like Akihabara? Every time we went, I think you've liked it. But then when I talk about the idea of Akihabara, it seems like you don't like
で
it.
もなんか、好きか嫌いかって言われると、それに答えるのはちょっと難しいけど、なんか、イメージは変わったよね。その、ここ最近で。なんか今までは秋葉原って言われると、なんだ、オタクっぽいとか、ちょっと、なんだろう。中年のおじさんが可愛い子を見に行く感じのイメージだったんだけど、でもなんか行ってみて最近なんか、結構、なんて言うんだろう。なんだろうね。元気がある街っていうかね、なんか、輝いてる感じはしたよね。で、だから個人的にその秋葉原が持ってる、ことについてあんまり、なんて言えばいいんだ。秋葉原のニーシュに私の趣味が合ってないから、まあ、めちゃめちゃ魅力的っていうわけではないんだけど、その街としてはすごくいいところだなと思う。
Also recommend the kebabs. There's these awesome. I didn't know kebabs came in sandwich form. I thought they only came like in shish kebab form. But really, really value. I recommend hitting them up in Akihabara. Surprisingly good value. Also really good. There's some Turkish food we've determined. I think. Yeah, check out Akihabara. Thanks for the comments. That bell means we reached the end of today's episode. Thanks for joining us in another lazy conversation towards fluency. If you have any language-related questions and are just looking for general advice, send an email to lazyfluency@gmail.com. We might respond in the next episode. Also, make sure to check out our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and more. We'd appreciate the support. This has been Joey.
And Ayami.
Signing off.
じゃあね
じゃあねー。